offering our children an outstanding education is one of our most fundamental, perhaps our most fundamental obligation as a country. Whether we meet that obligation not only reflects who we are as Americans, it will shape our future as a nation. Countries without educators today will outcompete us tomorrow, and I refuse to let that happen on my watch.
We now in America have dropped from the #1 country in the globe, top country in the nation, for percentage of our population as college graduates. We've gone not to number 3, not to number 5, we're number 9 and falling. This is crazy because you can't drive a 21st century knowledge-based economy on a population that's not being sourced and nurtured and empowered educationally. It's our greatest national security issue because if we fail to really confront this issue, we will see our nation decline.
In the midst of the worst economic crisis that I think we have all seen, every conversation goes back to one critical thing, and that's education. This impacts all of us, and it's really a selfish fight that we take on. This is not about one street, this is not about one city, and it's not about one state. This is a fight that we have to take on across the United States.
In New York, we're operating under the agrarian school calendar from 1880. There aren't any fields to plow as there were 130 years ago. So why are we still using the same education calendar? This system needs to be eradicated.
I think it was Albert Einstein who once said doing the same thing over and over again and thinking that you're going to get a different result is insanity. Well, we can no longer afford to operate insanity in this country. About 55% of the schools in the city of Cleveland right now are either an academic emergency or academic watch. That is unacceptable. It is immoral.
For Indianapolis public schools, we were known nationally as having some of the worst dropout factories. So, we have a big challenge because we have a huge gap, and the things that we're doing right now are not filling that gap quickly enough. So we have to really focus on teacher quality. We have to focus on holding our schools accountable. We have to get everyone pulling in the same direction. It's a crisis, and we need to recognize it for what it is.
That's right, we need to stay on that track.
We've come to a moment in time in our history, in this nation, and certainly in Denver, Colorado, where we can no longer do the same thing over and over again and expect our children to meet the grade necessary in order to compete.
Welcome to school.
We've got to do radical things. We've got to make sure we're very intentional about bringing quality programs in there.
Public education is the fundamental building block of democracy, and so people passionately care about how their children are educated. To make change within that system is inherently difficult. You have powers in place and people in power that have been around for a long time and are comfortable in the way things are. Some of those things are great, some of them work well, some of them don't. We know that all kids don't have access to opportunity. And so a Democrat who believes in education reform is somebody that's willing to say, we can do it better, and it's okay that we do things differently. It's hard to do it, but it's imperative that we take the effort and make sure that it happens.
So this is going to be how we line up. We're going to be called by our people. And when your whole people...
It's clear that doing the same old things will not get the job done for our kids. So when I took office, I asked Arnie Duncan to work with states and local school districts to take on business as usual in our education system. And that's how the Race to the Top competition was born last July. It's a national competition among states to improve our schools.
The race to the top really raised the eyebrows of a lot of Democrats that couldn't believe that President Obama would be with us. But he had a Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, who was a spectacular educator and a real creative thinker.
President Obama's leadership on education reform issues are critical because it brings legitimacy to the work that progressive education reformers are doing. It used to be heretical for a Democrat to talk about charter schools and to talk about school choice. And most people don't realize President Obama was a trailblazer on this issue long before he actually became President of the United States. He served on the board of a charter school. Charter schools were initially a progressive idea, and it was then grabbed by groups who didn't share our values. And their principles were to defund public education, and that became the predominant theme in education reform. DFER changed the conversation and changed it in a way where people saw that you could have a talk about education reform that wasn't anti-public school, but pro-public school and pro-public education.
Well, you guys, I think you definitely have shown me that you know how to do on your mark.
The biggest variable that makes the greatest impact is a teacher. It is where we all come from. Before there were presidents of the United States and senators and you and I, there were teachers who molded us into the next generation. And so I'm recognizing that we have to kind of take a look back at the profession, create a system that evaluates, respects, supports, and nurtures, and that at the end of the day, when we do that, our students are the ones that win.
If you have teacher evaluation with kind of high stakes evaluation and you don't provide support, then it's punitive. You know, and if you do provide support, it's transformative. I helped bring DFER to Indiana because there were a lot of Democrats who felt the same way I did, but there was kind of no forum or structure for us to come together, kind of put out a united front, just kind of being there as an advocacy organization. Be able to watch the school. In the 2011 session, we were able to actually get through quite an ambitious ed reform agenda. We have started to intervene in failing schools. So the state of Indiana is actually, taking charge, taking those schools and saying we're not going to have kids in these kinds of places anymore in the state.
Students at Green Valley Elementary School are reading better, doing math better, they're writing better, and they are ready. They are ready to win. Will you join me in that? Hi.
We had young people in our city, particularly in the neighborhood that I represented, that had absolutely no choice but to go to the institutions that were there, provide education for them, and they were failing them. And so as a member of the Denver City Council at the time, I helped lead an effort to reform a group of schools in one area, the far north area of the city. There was a pushback, but we were not going to be denied because we were not going to allow for these people who wanted to keep the status quo to continue to keep these kids locked into a system. They did not give them choice or opportunity to get ready to compete.
And this is not about the comfort or glorification of any adult, but it is about us accepting the reality that the traditional way that we're educating children is failing. And that's why organizations such as DFER are important, because it gives us the strength and the support that we need as Democrats to stand up for reform. Reform is good for children, but it's also good for adults. We've lost over 30,000 students over the last decade in the city of Cleveland for the Cleveland schools. With less students, that means we'll have less teachers, less union members. How could that be good for anybody?
We are in the state we are right now because of a severe poverty of compassion, a poverty of urgency. We have to have a greater sense of outrage, of urgency, of insistence that whatever it takes, we will make this nation true. We will make it real. And the way to do that is by making sure that every child has opportunity to enter an educational environment that will nurture their genius.
Before I became a Maryland State Senator, I was a teacher in Southwest Baltimore City. What I believe is that I saw hope in my classroom. I saw kids who wanted access to a great education. That's where we start, that's where we focus, and we figure out how do we provide that for them. If we can set up those systems, our future is so bright. If we fail, the consequences are disastrous.
Being a Democrat for education reform simply means that I am a Democrat who's determined to change islands of excellence to hemispheres of hope. And so for me, a Democrat for education reform is a person that has no excuses, has higher standards for our kids, believes, I always joke, sort of like Malcolm X, that by any means necessary, we're going to get there, and that we shouldn't accept barriers to that goal.
I think that a Democrat for education reform looks like me, looks like you, looks like the PTA parent, looks like the grandmother who's raising their grandkids at home. I think it means to recognize that we're part of a link in a community chain, that if we all don't take on this fight, then we all lose at the end.
I am Indiana Representative Miriam Sullivan, and I am a DFER.
I'm former Colorado Speaker of the House, Ernest Carroll, and I'm a DFER.
I am New Jersey State Senator Teresa Feliz, y yo soy una DFER.
I'm Michael Hancock, mayor of the great city of Denver, Colorado, and I'm a DFER.
I'm Maryland State Senator Bill Ferguson, and I am a DFER.
I am State Senator Nina Turner, and I am a DFER.
I'm David Patterson of New York. I used to be the governor, but I am still a DFER.
I'm Mayor Corey Booker, and I'm a Democrat for education